Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. She's a postdoc there, and she will talk about sustainable HVO production potential and environmental impact.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. Yes, I'm going to talk about potentials for HVO production from Swedish raw materials. And what I'm going to talk about today is part of an ongoing project. So the bigger project is on the sustainable HVO production potential and environmental impact. And we're also going to do techno-economical analysis. But today I'm only focusing on the potential assessments, and I'm only going to show you preliminary results for some of the raw materials that we have looked at. Yes, so this is the project group. We are both researchers from SLU, IVL, the Swedish Environmental Research Institute, and we have a reference group with representatives from Neste and Preem. And this project is carried out within the collaborative research program, Renewable Transportation Fuels and Systems. So, this is statistics from the Swedish Energy Agency showing the liquid biofuel mix from 2011 up till 2018. And as you can see, the use of HVO in the mix has grown steadily and is now the most important biofuel in Sweden, liquid biofuel, and followed by FAME, ethanol, and biogas. So what is it made of? And this is this first one. This is also statistics from the Swedish Energy Agency. And the first graph is showing development of different raw materials in the HVO production. And up here you can see from last year what it was produced of. And it's in Swedish, so I will tell you a little bit what it is. So quite a big part, 37% there, is residues from the slaughteries. 3% palm oil, 46% residues from the palm oil industry, less than 1% rapeseed oil, about 10% tall oil, and corn oil, 4%. And that's also, this is where are the raw materials coming from? And you can see Indonesia and Malaysia for the palm oil and palm oil residues is quite big, but also Germany, the US, and a lot of different countries. 34% from other countries. Swedish raw materials is 5% today, or last year. So in this project we wanted to look at what are the different raw materials that could be sourced more locally, and look at the potential for HVO production from these. And this is not because Nordic and Swedish raw materials is particularly much better, but because, as we have heard today, we have a quite big potential from forestry, and also we have, at least in Sweden, decreased use of agricultural land. So potentially we could produce more biofuels from this. So we started off by looking at what can be produced in Nordic conditions that could be used, and what waste streams are interesting to look at, and are already many of them are already in use. So for the potential studies, we used assessments from earlier studies and recalculated them for HVO technologies, and assessments of available land. We looked at oil crops. For some raw materials, there are little earlier studies, so we are also doing some own assessments on cover crops, for example. And the aim was to look at a market potential for short-term or current potential, and also future potential 2015. Right. So, as you could see, there are already today quite a lot of waste oils or residue oils used. used cooking oils and waste animal fats, residues from industries, tall oil and mixed fatty acids. We also considered energy crops or crops from agricultural land, could be oil crops, or lignocellulosic crops that are converted to fatty acids. And agriculture and forestry residues, straw, forestry residues and stumps, and also algae, in particular microalgae then, for fatty acid production. So we looked at this, what are the raw materials out there, and we discussed with a reference group, and we are still discussing right now what's interesting to focus on, and what's relevant for them to look at, and try to find a list of raw materials to look at for the potential study. And this is the list how it looks like right now. Used cooking oil of waste animal fats, which is already in use, as I said. Tall oil, also used. Mixed fatty acids, used to some extent. And then raw materials from agricultural land. We look at oil crops, rapeseed oil, from fallow land as an indication of land that is not competing currently with food or feed production in Sweden. We also are looking a little bit at a crop called Camelina sativa for production on marginal lands, but also lignocellulosic crops on marginal lands and fallow land. And agricultural residues for biochemical conversions to fatty acids, and cover crops. Also then Camelina sativa potentially could be used as a cover crop. This is an oil crop. Or lignocellulosic crops as cover crops. And then forest residues and stumps also for biochemical conversion. And for these that I have mentioned now, it's maybe more interesting in a long-term perspective, as these are kind of some of them new or non-established technologies. So just to clarify a little bit, what do I mean with biochemical conversion of lignocellulose to lipids or fatty acids in this case? And now we look at the conversion of lignocellulosic biomass to lipids using oleaginous yeasts. And these type of yeasts can convert both C5 and C6 sugars to lipids. And lignocellulosic biomass such as forest residues or straw can be used, but it requires pretreatment similar to lignocellulosic ethanol production. And this yeast is also producing considerable amounts of biomass, yeast biomass, at the same time as it is producing lipids. And this could be used as biomass biofuel feedstock, for example, or for feed. And just a few words about what we're looking at as a crop for marginal lands or as a cover crop. Camelina sativa is a relatively low input oil crop, but it is an annual crop and it requires some input. And winter camelina can be used as a cover crop in cold climates. And it has seeds with about 40% fat content, but the yield can differ quite a lot then if it's used as a cover crop or as a standalone crop. So I will present some preliminary results for the raw materials that I have put little arrows here on. The other ones we have not been able to produce so much results for yet. Yes. So first, if we look at the used cooking oils, this is the potential from that is not very high. And I mean, the main incentive to collect these materials may be because of the problem it's causing in the piping system and so on. And I think Sweden is at least in some municipalities, are actually quite good at collecting, or much better now than before, collecting oils from households. But still it's quite low. And it's also partly due to that we are not eating so much deep fried food and so on. So that's why. Animal fats, there you can see the potential for the future is more or less similar, and that is based on projected animal production of animal products in the EU, where it is projected to decrease a little bit in beef and pork, but increase in chicken production. Yeah, but that is not necessarily related to a decreased meat consumption. That could be supplied through import instead. And for fallow land, we looked at rapeseed oil cultivation, and the projections for the future is very uncertain, and it is based on a scenario rather than a prognosis. And I've only, for some of these, for the technologies that depend on conversion, biochemical conversion to lipids, I only looked at the future potential. So this is the same graph, but here I have added the use today, the total use today. So for looking at animal fats, for example, this is the total use in the Swedish HVO mix, and it is imported from several different countries. Animal fats, or HVOs produced from animal fats. And the fourth one is the use today from Swedish raw materials. So animal fats, and also used cooking oil. You can't see it really, but it's there. And tall oil is used today. Yeah. So what are we going to do next? We are going to continue with this potential study and add new raw materials that are currently not assessed. And then we will select, together with the reference group, 2 or 3 interesting raw materials for the techno-economic and environmental assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanna. I just wonder, when you talk about the potential, you have this preliminary results here. Is the technical potential you're talking about?
So, yes.
So, do you try to see the economical potential, or?
That could be done when we do the techno-economic assessment later. Maybe for some of these technologies, it's a bit hard to know because they're not really assessed.
Yeah.
The cost for them yet.
But then you will do that also when you continue.
Yes.
And the second question about the marginal land, it was quite low potential from that. Is it due to low yields, or the amount of land, or both?
Yes, both, I think. It's not very, I don't remember how much land it was now, but we looked at Camelina sativa for that, and also at some lignocellulosic crops. And we considered a little bit lower yield because of maybe there will be less management on those lands, because already now they are marginal lands because of the lower economic profitability of those lands. So that's why.
Okay, thank you. Okay,